Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
This week, videos showing an earthquake going off when the New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern is doing a live TV interview have gone viral. She was calm through the video, she maintains her composure, and she mentions that it's a small earthquake.
We're just having a bit of an earthquake here, Ryan. Quite a decent shake here, but if you see things moving behind me, the beehive moves a little more than most.
The quake that she experienced was about a 5.8 magnitude, which struck near Wellington. New Zealand experiences some 20,000 quakes a year, mostly mild, while Bangalore, where I am right now, has felt fewer quakes through history than what New Zealand faces in a day. In this episode, we're going to explore a little bit about why and how earthquakes occur, when they can occur, and a really big one that is due to occur any time in India. So what are earthquakes? Earthquakes are a shaking of the Earth's surface, typically caused by a sudden release of stored energy in the Earth's crust. The mechanism of quakes is driven by tectonic activity because of tectonic plates. The outer edges of these plates are called plate boundaries, and they are composed of what is known as faults. A fault is a gap or a fracture in between two blocks of rock on the Earth's surface, and these rocks move relative to one another at a fault. There are broadly three kinds of motion where the rocks or plates or blocks, as they are known in seismology and geology, move relative to one another. There is a normal fault where two blocks are moving away from each other, that is a divergent boundary. There is a reverse fault where they are moving towards each other, that's a convergent boundary. One block may even slip underneath the other. And then there is lateral fault where the motion is lateral or sideways. That means that the two blocks move against each other sideways at a transform boundary. The Earth's surface is solid. So this kind of motion where rocks compress against each other or pull apart or even slide against each other builds up stress. When all the tension and stress is finally released, a tremendous amount of energy is released in the form of an earthquake. If a huge earthquake occurs in the ocean, it can even displace water and cause a tsunami. Location below the Earth's surface where the earthquake starts is called the hypocenter, and the location directly above it on the surface of the Earth is called the epicenter. These kind of movements of rocks and blocks along fault lines don't just cause earthquakes but also volcanism or mountain building and even ocean trenches, which is a depression in the ocean floor like the Mariana Trench. So why do these tectonic plates move around? The answer to that has to do with the Earth's structure. The Earth is made up of concentric spherical regions. It primarily consists of four main layers. The crust, which is solid and is the uppermost or the outermost layer, the top of which is of course called the surface. Underneath that is a very viscous and thick mantle, which is essentially still solid but in geological time behaves like a thick fluid. Below that is a liquid outer core, which is made up of molten iron and nickel. And further below that is a solid inner core, which is essentially a ball of iron and nickel and is smaller in size than our moon. The inner core is almost 5,500 degrees Celsius in temperature, which is about the same temperature as the surface of the sun. The outer core is about 4,000 degrees Celsius. And the mantle ranges from 200 degrees Celsius at the top all the way to 4,000 degrees Celsius where it touches the outer core. This amount of intense heat under the surface of the Earth, under the crust, causes convection, where warm material rises up and cool material sinks down. This is why in our rooms we have room heaters at the ground level and air conditioners higher up. The same convective process takes place in the Earth's mantle, where warm rock rises up over a period of time and becomes a part of the Earth's crust. This rising up happens in places called ridges, which are typically under the ocean and hence are called mid-ocean ridges. During the formation of a new crust in mid-ocean ridges, as the rock thrusts up, it also exerts lateral pressure or sideways pressure, which essentially is what causes tectonic plates to move around. Meanwhile, somewhere else, a colder part of the Earth's crust sinks down into the mantle in a process called subduction. This process of rising up and subducting is because of convection, and this convection process will continue for as long as the core is hot, which is millions of years into the future. As these tectonic plates move, they mechanically interact with one another, causing quakes, among other things. Quakes can also be caused without tectonic activity. On the moon, for example, they are caused because the moon is cooling and shrinking, famously like a grape turning into a raisin and fracturing the crust. We have recorded several moon quakes since the Apollo days. On Mars, they are caused because of the same phenomenon today, although in the past, Mars was indeed tectonically active, just like the Earth is today. Back on Earth, we know that New Zealand experiences so many earthquakes because it sits at a plate boundary. In fact, it is situated on what is called the Ring of Fire, which is a belt that is prone to very high number of earthquakes and volcanic activity. This belt, the Ring of Fire, runs along the edges of major continents, and nearly 90% of the world's earthquakes occur in this region. When earthquakes occur, they can be foreshocks, which is energy release before a quake, and aftershocks, which is energy release after. The quake itself is the highest release of energy and is called the main shock. While the quake occurs, there are two kinds of seismic waves that occur, which are basically waves or propagation of energy. Surface waves travel on the Earth's surface, and body waves travel through the interior of the Earth. Body waves are further divided into two types that a lot of people have heard of: primary waves or P waves and secondary waves or S waves. P waves are the first kind of waves that seismometers can pick up around the world. They're also called pressure waves. They travel faster than S waves because they are longitudinal. Essentially, they travel as sound waves and they propagate at the speed of sound. S waves, which are also called shear waves, come later and are transverse waves. Because they emanate from the ground, P and S waves are useful in figuring out the location of a quake. Surface waves, which travel along the Earth's surface, can travel much farther without losing energy and can also cause more damage. To mitigate damage, like Jacinda Ardern mentioned in her video, buildings in cities and localities are ideally to be planned keeping quakes in mind. Japan is an expert in this area, where towers, for example, are built to withstand earthquakes. These buildings are basically giant shock absorbers, sometimes comprising of blocks of just rubber to absorb small earthquake energies. There are also motion dampeners that are placed along the lengths of the building, which is basically liquid in containers. The interiors of buildings in highly earthquake-prone areas ideally do not have things that could rattle and fall and kill people, such as chandeliers, for example. Most earthquake-related injuries, in fact, are caused by falling or flying objects. So there are earthquake-resistant codes for construction in areas that are prone to quakes. One place that does not have these codes strictly in place is the Himalayan region, where there are a lot of dams which can pose a great risk during earthquakes. The Himalayan region itself is earthquake prone because of mountain building kind of plate motion. Here the Indian plate is colliding into the Eurasian plate, and this continuously raises the height of the mountain range, which is actually the highest and the youngest mountain range in the world. Now, we cannot predict earthquakes. We don't understand the Earth's insides enough to model it accurately to be able to predict random energy release from random motion that occurs over geological time periods. We simply don't have the knowledge or ability. We haven't even been able to sample material from the core yet, and it's absolutely impossible to predict earthquakes. But what we can do is take an informed guess. We can perform statistical analysis of quakes in a location and understand if there's a pattern in time to how frequently they occur. This is being done world over, and from studying existing data going back to historical accounts over nearly 1,000 years, seismologists have now warned us that the Himalayas are due for a mega earthquake anytime, and this would measure beyond 8 on the Richter scale and cause extensive damage. This hypothesized imminent earthquake is called the Great Himalayan Earthquake, and seismologists world over are dreading and waiting for it to occur. This isn't meant to scare. We don't know when this earthquake would occur. It could happen tomorrow, it could occur 5 days from now, 5 years from now, 50 years from now, 200 years from now. We don't know. We cannot predict it. We also don't know where it would occur. All we know is that statistically, there is a very imminent possibility of this quake occurring, and therefore we have to be prepared for it. This is public scientific knowledge. Life has to go on in the meanwhile, and what is important is that now that we are equipped with this knowledge, we need to plan our construction activities better to be safe when such a disaster occurs. If you would like to read more about earthquakes, I cannot recommend enough an essay in the New Yorker called The Really Big One. It's about an imminent megaquake off the west coast of the US in a region called the Cascadia Subduction Zone. It's written by Catherine Schultz, and it also won the 2015 feature Pulitzer as well. It describes beautifully how seismologists and geologists turn detectives and find evidence of centuries-old earthquakes, thus calculating statistically when the next one would occur. I highly, highly recommend it. It's one of my absolute favorite pieces of science writing. This is Sandhya Ramesh from Bengaluru for The Print.